If you thought Days of Our Lives was already running on pure chaos this week, Friday, February 27th is the episode where the pressure doesn't just rise, it starts crushing people. Because Salem isn't just looking for Stephanie Johnson. Salem is racing against a twisted fantasy, one where a captor thinks fear can turn into love, and captivity can become a second chance. And while that terrifying story tightens its grip, another battle plays out quietly but just as intensely. Marlena fighting to reach Kayla before grief and panic swallow her whole. Plus, Leo and Dimitri sit down for a heart-to-heart that sounds gentle, but could easily become the kind of moment that changes everything. So let's break down what Friday's episode is building, and why the fallout could be worse than anyone expects. Friday doesn't start with an explosion. It starts with something more dangerous. A quiet emotional collapse that's been building all week. Marlena manages to get through to Kayla, and the spoiler specifically says it's difficult. That one word tells you everything. Kayla isn't just worried. Kayla is in survival mode. She's the kind of person who holds everyone else together, so when she's shaken, she doesn't fall apart in obvious ways. She goes numb. She goes rigid. She gets stuck in that state where you're functioning, but your mind keeps replaying the worst possibilities like a loop you can't stop. And the reason it's so hard for Marlena to reach her is because Kayla likely doesn't want to say it out loud, because saying it out loud makes it real. Not, Stephanie is missing. But, Stephanie may be in active danger. Marlena knows how this works. She's not just a friend, she's a psychiatrist, and she recognizes the signs when someone is starting to drown in fear. She knows Kayla's strength is also her weakness. Kayla will try to stay in control until she suddenly can't. So Marlena doesn't come in with generic comfort. She comes in with the kind of questions that force reality to the surface. What do you know for sure? What are you terrified of? What's the possibility you keep avoiding? And the moment Kayla finally admits the truth, that this isn't random, everything shifts. Because this isn't a missing person vibe anymore. When someone is chloroformed, restrained, and locked in a storeroom, that's not a coincidence. That's planning. That's intent. Which means the person holding Stephanie isn't just trying to hide her. He's trying to own the situation. And here's where the psychological danger ramps up. Marlena may help Kayla realize that the captor could be operating on a fantasy. One where fear turns into dependence, and dependence turns into love. That's the terrifying pattern with obsession. The captor convinces himself that if he controls every variable, the victim will eventually understand. So when Marlena gets through to Kayla, it may not just be a comforting scene. It may be the moment Kayla stops living in denial and starts thinking like someone facing a predator. This isn't about finding Stephanie in time. It's about stopping someone before he escalates. And once Kayla accepts that, she won't just be scared. She'll be ruthless. Friday is where the search turns from frantic worry into a coordinated hunt. Alex and Brady combining resources sounds simple, but it's actually one of the most important story moves of the episode, because it puts two very different energies on the same mission. Alex is operating from emotion first. He's protective, reactive, and fueled by a need to do something right now. He's already the guy making threats, especially toward Jeremy, because in Alex's mind, the fastest way to stop fear is to find someone to blame. And that's exactly where he's vulnerable. Because Brady is the opposite. Brady has survived enough chaos to know you don't win a crisis by swinging blindly. You win by building a net, contacts, pressure points, information trails, and quick decisions that close escape routes. So when these two team up, it's a volatile but effective combination. Alex is the engine. Brady is the steering wheel. And the word, resources, is doing heavy lifting here. That implies they're going beyond normal calls and normal procedures. This might include leaning on connections that aren't official, getting access to info before it becomes public, pressuring people who might know something, coordinating with Steve, Jada indirectly to cover more ground. Brady stepping up also matters emotionally. It frames him as the stabilizing force in a storm. He's not just helping, he's choosing to carry weight, because that's what he does when Salem is on fire. But here's the twist that makes this partnership dangerous. Alex's anger can be weaponized. If the real captor wants to buy time, the smartest move is to feed Salem a target. Someone believable, someone already suspicious, someone like Jeremy. If Alex gets a lead that feels too perfect, too clean, too immediate, especially one that points back to Jeremy again, that's not necessarily justice. That might be bait. Because the best traps in Salem don't feel like traps. They feel like answers. So Friday may show Alex ready to charge toward a confrontation, while Brady has to decide whether to let him run, or pull him back before he destroys the search. And that's the tension. Will Alex's rage speed up the rescue, or derail it? While Alex and Brady push outward, covering territory, shaking trees, Steve and Jada do the deeper work. They dig. And this is where the episode can start turning from confusion into clarity. Because the show has been dangling Jeremy like a decoy. But the story keeps whispering one name that should chill everyone: Owen Kent. Owen isn't just a suspect. Owen is history, Stephanie's history. And that makes him uniquely dangerous. If Owen is back, then this isn't an obsession that started this week. This is a fixation that never ended. He's the kind of stalker who doesn't just want attention. He wants narrative control. He wants to rewrite the past in his head until it becomes a love story instead of a crime. That's what makes it terrifying. Owen may genuinely believe he's the hero of this story. So Steve and Jada digging for leads could look like revisiting old records connected to Stephanie's past captivity, looking for patterns that match Owen's behavior, identifying locations tied to Owen's history, access, or habits, tracking recent movements, sightings, or connections that seem unrelated, until they aren't. Steve is a nightmare for anyone trying to hide. He's relentless and experienced, and he knows how criminals think. He doesn't just follow evidence, he follows motive. And Jada's involvement adds intensity because this is personal. It's not just her job. It's her best friend, so her instincts will be sharper, but her patience will be thinner. That combination, Steve's cold skill and Jada's emotional urgency, is exactly how a lead snaps into place. Friday could deliver that classic DOOL beat where one tiny detail suddenly matters. A name from the past. A location that shouldn't connect, but does. A timeline inconsistency. A clue that screams, "This isn't Jeremy." But the spoiler language is careful. They try to dig up new leads. That suggests they're not fully there yet, meaning the episode may end with a breakthrough that's horrifying because it's close, but not close enough. The truth is within reach, but Stephanie might still be trapped when the credits roll. Now we get to the part of Friday that's honestly the most terrifying, because it's not about what Salem is doing, it's about what Stephanie is forced to do alone. Stephanie works hard to free herself. And that one line tells you she's not just waiting to be rescued. She's not sitting there hoping the door magically opens. She's in survival mode, thinking, calculating, adapting. She's fighting with the only weapon she still has, her mind. Because captivity stories on days are never just physical. They're psychological. Stephanie wakes up disoriented. Her senses aren't fully clear. Her body is sluggish, and her heart is racing. She's restrained, locked away, and isolated. And that isolation is the point. The captor wants her to feel like the world has disappeared, and he's the only thing left. So Stephanie's first battle isn't even escape, it's staying grounded. She has to force her thoughts into order. Where am I? How long have I been here? What can I control? What can I do without triggering him? And that's where Friday can get intensely suspenseful, because every small move becomes high stakes. She may start with the smallest adjustments, testing the restraints without making a sound, shifting her wrists inch by inch to see if there's slack, listening for patterns, footsteps, keys, a door creak, silence between visits, scanning the room for anything useful. A rough edge, a loose staple, a jagged corner, anything that could help. But what makes this scarier is the emotional trap underneath it. Because Stephanie isn't just dealing with a kidnapper. She's dealing with someone who may be telling himself this is romantic. Someone who wants to believe he's not a villain. He's a man who never stopped loving her, a man who deserves a chance, a man who thinks Stephanie just needs time to remember what they have. And in that kind of sick fantasy, Stephanie's resistance becomes more than resistance. To him, it becomes betrayal. So every attempt to free herself risks triggering the worst version of him, the version that realizes he's losing control. And that's what makes escape attempts so terrifying in obsession storylines, because the moment the captor feels he's losing his dream, he doesn't calm down. He tightens his grip, he tries to reassert control in bigger ways, new restraints, new mind games, new threats, new rules. So even if Stephanie manages to loosen something, even if she gets partially free, that might not be her win. That might be the moment he snaps into a more dangerous phase. And then there's the eerie Jeremy factor, because the story keeps teasing scenes with Jeremy that may not even be real. Stephanie's mind could be scrambling for a face to attach to fear. In trauma, the brain often grabs the most immediate suspect, the most familiar threat, and turns it into a nightmare image. So Friday may blur reality. Is Jeremy actually involved? Is Jeremy physically present? Or is Stephanie hallucinating, dreaming, or flashing back, her mind mixing old fear with new terror? And DOOL will likely keep that uncertainty alive, because uncertainty is suspense. The audience won't know what's real until the show decides to reveal the truth. And then, right in the middle of all that darkness, Friday pivots to something quieter. Leo and Dimitri have a heart-to-heart about their fears. On the surface, this might feel like a break from the danger story. But in soap structure, these quiet talks are rarely just filler. They're pressure valves, and sometimes they're turning points. Because the word that matters most is fears. Not worries, not complaints. Fears. That means we're talking about the deep stuff. Fear of being disposable. Fear of not being chosen. Fear of loving someone who won't fully return it. Fear that the future is already written, and it ends badly. Leo is a character who hides vulnerability behind performance. He uses humor, exaggeration, and attitude as armor. So if Leo is talking about fear, that means something cracked. And Dimitri? Dimitri has his own history of protecting himself, sometimes with charm, sometimes with distance. So when the two of them sit down and actually speak honestly, it becomes a question of what happens when the masks come off. Because Friday's tease, will it lead to them doing more than just talk? Is the show signaling a shift? That could mean a confession that changes their relationship, a moment of physical closeness that surprises them both, a decision to take a risk they've been avoiding, or even an emotional promise that becomes dangerous later. And here's why it matters for the larger episode tone. While Stephanie's storyline is about being trapped and fighting for control, Leo and Dimitri's storyline is about choosing vulnerability and risking consequences. Both stories are about fear. One fear is forced on someone. The other fear is willingly faced. And that parallel gives the episode emotional depth, while also setting up new complications for later. Because in Salem, a soft moment is never just soft. It's usually the beginning of a bigger mess. So Friday, February 27th isn't a single storyline episode. It's a pressure cooker episode. Everything tightens at once, emotionally, psychologically, strategically. Marlena gets through to Kayla, and that might be the moment Kayla stops hoping this is simple. and starts facing the ugliest truth. Alex and Brady combine forces, which sounds heroic, until you realize anger and urgency can be manipulated. Steve and Jada dig deeper, but the closer they get to the truth, the more it feels like the danger is evolving. And Stephanie's fight to free herself becomes the most haunting part, because her courage might provoke escalation. Meanwhile, Leo and Dimitri open an emotional door that could lead to something bigger than either of them intended. And hanging over Salem, like a second storm gathering? Sophia's schemes are still escalating, and Holly's spiral is still deepening. So it's not just one crisis. It's a stack of crises, each one feeding the next. And that's when Salem becomes its most dangerous, when no one has room to breathe. When mistakes happen, when desperation overrides judgment. So the question isn't simply, will Stephanie be rescued? The real question is darker. When the truth finally comes out, when we see who's behind the captivity and what their real goal is, how many lives are going to be changed permanently in the fallout? Because in Salem, rescue is never the end of the story. Sometimes, it's just the beginning.